So last week my app exploded on the App Store. Alright, it didn't actually explode, but I did see an increase in downloads and impressions, and I think it all has to do with the efforts that I put on marketing, in particular with app screenshots. So let's talk about it. Whether you're an indie dev yourself or you're simply curious about this path, this is a place for you. Subscribe if you want to hear some tips, some learnings, and just some shenanigans that you might enjoy. Oh, and by the way, my name is Rolando. I'm a software engineer and designer, building apps for fun and documenting my process here. Now let's get into the video. Okay, so the first thing that I realized is that app screenshots are not really screenshots. They are almost like ads. That means that you can include text, and that text can be very important, and we'll talk about that later. And that also means that you can zoom, scale, or even just draw graphics that are not one-to-one with your app, but they do a better job at explaining what the app does. You want to curate what you show on these screenshots. That means best possible content. Don't just have a lot of hello worlds in the different items that you're showing. And it also means eliminating all the noise and busy UI items that are not as important to show at this acquisition state. The state at which people are browsing the App Store and deciding whether they want to download your app. Speaking of acquisition, there are two more things to mention. First, size does indeed matter when it comes to app screenshots. As people are browsing through the App Store, they will be seeing thumbnails of your screenshots, so it is important that any text that you're showing, or even any graphic that you think people should be able to pick up as they're browsing, be as crispy as possible. And second, once they're in your App Store page, or even when they're seeing these thumbnails, you want to have visual variety, not just of the type of screenshots, but the actual graphics, presentation, and layout. And this is your opportunity to bring as much of your branding and your app look and feel that you want to convey to potential customers. Alright, so enough theory. Let me jump into Sketch and show you the before and after of my app screenshots, and we'll talk about all of the things that I just mentioned in practice. So these are the old screenshots that I had for my app. And by the way, my app is called Bleep. It helps you keep your notes, bookmarks, and images all in one place that is visual, really nice to organize and personal. So what I had initially is not particularly terrible, but it's also not great. You can see how the title and the text is kind of repeated in a pattern for all of them, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I have seen successful apps with this type of format. But if you pair that up with repetitive kind of UI like I have here and not really showing the best possible content, it can get a little bit dull. So if we go onto the updated version, you can see how I did one important thing with the text, which is just get rid of the subtitles. I just kept a larger title instead, because what this means is that when I'm showing it on the App Store, they will be smaller, but you can still read these texts. And you can also see that there's visual variety. I took the time to have different layouts across each of these screenshots, and it made it a little bit more engaging. Similarly, you can see how I took some liberties where I felt it was appropriate. So for example, when I'm showing safe links, I'm not showing the standard iOS share panel that it has all the different apps that you can share, it has friends and whatnot. I thought that was going to be a little bit noisy, and I really wanted to create a representation of what that interaction looks like. And this is also why on this collect everything, I don't have an app screenshot itself. I just kind of create this vibe, but it's enough, right? It doesn't have to show any UI. Like, it's enough for you to understand what you can do with it. That's kind of what I have for the syncing slide. I just have the bottom of the app. Most MacBooks right now have a notch, so I thought it might be enough. Honestly, this one is still my least favorite. I can probably improve it, but I do feel like it feels more interesting than this one here. Let's talk about the content now. So on the top part, there are a few value props, right? Like the first one is capture everything, which is important. Or like the idea behind this one is to not worry about where to put things. You just capture, doesn't matter the format. But I figured on my improved version that it would be easier to just say straight up what the app does, right? So that's why it's your notes, links, and images belong together. As I'm recording this, I actually think instead of links, I want to say bookmarks instead. I don't know if that would fit quite well here, but you can see how this is more of a process. On the next one, I originally had beautiful previews, but this is something that applies to different areas, but show don't tell to me is a mantra that I value a lot. I don't need to mention the things are beautiful necessarily. I want people to see that, right? Which is also why I decided to take some time to curate the different content pieces that I show in the screenshot itself. So like, as I mentioned earlier, what I had here was my own content on Bleep, and it was pretty random. I mean, some things might even be too personal. I wanted to make things a little more relatable in this case. And then this basically became less necessary. And instead I wanted to make it be more utilitarian, meaning that we're mentioning notes, we're mentioning links. So links can be kind of tedious to add manually through here, and I wanted to mention something that can be overlooked, and I wanted to make it feel almost like a feature, even though it's kind of like a regular interaction with the system. I've already had notes as a value prop, but formatting notes, that's not really competing with Apple Notes. It feels almost too basic. So instead I went with feel right at home with your notes, which is a hint at, yes, this has a lot of functionality overlap with Apple Notes without actually having to talk about the specific features. This is also a good opportunity to showcase dark mode so that people know that, you know, the app is pretty versatile and very polished. It has different kind of themes and whatnot. For the third one, I had organize and curate. Drag and drop is something that is core to the Bleep experience, so to speak. I don't feel like it's something that easy to show on iOS. I have a macOS version where that's kind of like an easier interaction. Future versions will probably have that, but for now I decided to make it a little bit more aspirational. So just show really cool graphics here to show some variety. And if you kind of put all of these next to each other, I have links as one of the formats that I support, but I show it at kind of how you might use it every day, which is just kind of like share it directly to Bleep. Then I have notes, and then I have images, basically all in their best possible way. And yeah, I mean, if you compare to the first one, there's definitely more visual variety. Even if I zoom out, you can still kind of like read all of these more clearly, and it's like kind of more interesting overall. All right, and that's a wrap. Thank you for sticking till the end of this video, and if you liked it, please consider subscribing. It helps me and it helps you. Catch you on the next one. Peace.